What if the foods that you've been told are healthy are actually making you fat, sick, and addicted? What if the real enemy isn't your willpower, but a system designed to keep you hooked? Tonight, we're exposing the truth behind the unholy trinity, carbs, sugar, and seed oils, and how they've hijacked our health, our biology, and our future. Welcome back to another episode of CarnivorousGrama Speaks. My name is Robin Heron, and I am your carnivorous grandma. And tonight, I'm honored to welcome our special guest, Daniel Trevor, who is author of the game-changing book entitled Unholy Trinity: How Carbs, Sugar, and Oils Make Us Fat, Sick, and Addicted, and How to Escape Their Grip. So tonight, we're not going to sugarcoat the truth. We're going to dive right in, and I'm going to go ahead and let Daniel introduce himself.
No sugarcoating. Yes, that's right. We got to tell it like it is. There was a lot of thought put into that title too. And I thought, well, maybe it's a little strong, but anyway, there it was. Hi, Robin. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. We have a lot of similar friends that you've had on your channel that I've been interviewed by, Dr. Kiltz, Ken Berry, Dr. Ovadia, Anthony Chafee, the list goes on. So we have some similar friends and like that. So I'm really happy to be here. And let's not pull any punches.
Yes, no, we keep it real over here. We definitely keep it real over here. And this channel is all about the truth in food and nutrition and breaking down these barriers that we have to, with our fake food pyramid. We'll start with that. But so I want to just have you take a moment and introduce yourself. Just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here. My name is Daniel Trevor, and I am basically just a lower class street kid from Philly who was fortunate to very early on learn how to study well and that kind of thing. Not that I was a straight A student, but if I was interested in it, I could conquer it, So anyway, a few years ago, I had a heart attack and almost died. So having studied technical data all my life, I decided to dive into the science as a citizen scientist to figure out how could this happen to me? And what I discovered absolutely blew my mind, shocked and infuriated me. And because what we've been told to eat for 70 years or more has been killing us. You had just mentioned the fake food pyramid. That's what caused my heart attack. And, so I took the dive and I'm real good at analyzing data and statistics. And so I started chronicling my work and looking at all I went to Google University and YouTube University and all these different books and studies, and I immersed myself like that. And I found all these brilliant people, doctors and scientists and so forth, and they were pointing me in the right direction. So none of the book is like Daniel invented it. It's Daniel's opinion, right? This is all based on science. I even tell the reader in the beginning of the book, I said, look, I know you might be thinking, oh, he's not a doctor or scientist. Why should I trust him? And I say, look, don't. None of this is my opinion. Just think of me as a friendly relay point of what the best of 21st century science has to offer for your health and wellness and get better. I did. You can too. So I did that. And, I've heard, like I said, the food pyramid just set me way down off, that's just basically high carb slave food, as I call it. And with all the grains and that kind of thing. And then I found keto because I found all these brilliant people and then I found carnivore and I, got comfortable with all that. And I thought I need to share this information with my fellow humanoids, my brothers and sisters and that kind of thing. And especially, I have a lot of family back east and back in Philly and so forth. And I wrote the book. It's kind of like what I think of it is it's kind of a what you might call a how-to book on how I reversed 4 comorbidities, which I'll tell you about. And also it's an expose on big food, big pharma, and big medicine, because man, oh man, the amount of corruption coming out of those three areas. Now, I'm sure there's beautiful, wonderful people in all three, but there's certain sectors at the higher levels that are just don't have their ethics straight. Let's just put it that way. And then the third thing I think of it is it's what you might call a situation and data evaluation and analysis of this. In 1930, the obesity rate was 1% in the United States. We are now approaching 50% in under a mere 100 years. I mean, never before in history has a population gotten so fat and so sick so quickly. You got to say, what in the hell is happening? What happened? And when you pull the strings and you do the analysis of the data, you find out that it's the introduction of the carbs, the grain carbs, the sugars, and the oils in the 20th century in the amounts and concentrations never seen before. It's just, it's like, what? For example, in 1900, Hershey's came up with the first candy bar. What a way to start a century, right?
Right.
And we had all these other things and that kind of thing. And so I wrote the book for the average reader of health and wellness, for my Uncle Joe or my brother Dave, who are smart people, but they don't know technical information. So if I have to use a technical term, let's say endothelium, in parentheses right after it, I'll say lining of the arteries. Yes. And after I've done that 2 or 3 or 4 times, the reader goes, oh, endothelium, lining of the arteries, which is very important, as you already know, to what's going on in the body.
Yes.
And so I'm really, really conscious of that, because I've been an artist a lot of my life, especially in my early years. And what a lot of people don't know, which I can share with you, is in my youth, I was an award-winning jazz trumpet player.
Oh, wow.
And when I say award-winning, don't get too excited. It was in my high school years, we would have like Philly, Jersey, New York. We'd have Battle of the Bands, high school kind of thing. And every year I would win Most Outstanding Soloist of the Year award, right?
Wow.
And my best friend in high school was this guy named Michael Brecker. And I don't know who your jazz people will know who that is. And we were always playing together. And if I wasn't at his house, he was at my house. And he was going to be the next John Coltrane. I was going to be the next Freddie Hubbard. He actually made it. He just, just type in Michael Brecker on your YouTube channel there, and it's all over the place, right? So he made it. I got distracted. But being an artist, you have to know how to phrase something, whether it's a sentence or it's a musical phrase or it's a song, whatever it is, in order for your audience to understand it and to capture it, to receive it well, you have to know how to send it over. So I think I had that going for me going in on the book, because I wrote it for the average reader of health and wellness. I didn't write it for doctors, even though they need it more than the average person, because they don't get any of this. They don't get any of this education. They get maybe 10 or 20 hours in their whole medical career.
Right.
And check this out. Big Pharma funds the medical schools.
Stop what I say.
They want them reaching for the prescription pad. They don't want them talking to the patient about their diet, their exercise, and this and that. They don't know anything about that anyway. It's like, oh my God. I
mind blowing. It's truly,
it is
truly mind blowing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, they don't really. I mean, you think about, when was the last time that you went to your doctor and they asked you about what you eat? It's very rare. Like,
they wouldn't know. Look, it's a whole paradigm of drugs and prescriptions and drugs and procedures and more drugs and more procedures.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago I moved, and I like to keep an eye on my ejection fraction. And what that is that's basically how the heart, since I had a heart attack, I'd like to keep an eye on things, that kind of thing. And make sure that the blood is flowing out of the left ventricle to the rest of the body at the proper speed and that kind of thing. That's what that is, because it's got to go everywhere. It's got to go to your organs, your brain, your feet. You want to make sure and normal is between 50 and 65, not something you really need to hold on, memorize or anything. But so I like to do that, one of those once a week. So I got this new cardiologist, and the first thing I noticed, he's got a belly. And I'm thinking, okay, so what kind of advice is this guy giving to his patients, right? Because I know, looking at people's bodies, I know right away. I'm at the gym and I'm calling off the diseases. Okay, he's got visceral adipose tissue, which is, a belly. So that means he's type 2 diabetic. He's got cardiovascular disease. He's got fatty liver disease. His kidneys are off. I check them off as I'm going down my list here, right? So, and then first thing he asked, I told him, I said, look, I just want to get the echo. My blood labs are fine. I just had them all done. And the first question he asked me was, oh, okay, so how's your LDL? And, having our kind of diet, I said, well, it's through the roof, but my HDL is in the 90s. My triglycerides are in the 30s. I mean, these are like fantastic numbers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first thing he's thinking of is LDL, and it's been proven people with high cholesterol live the longest. People with low cholesterol die much earlier. And usually,
I just really want to touch on that, because that is a fact that I think a lot of people are not aware of. And, everybody's on a statin. It's a hundreds of billions of dollar industry. And so the goal is to get everybody on a statin. But what you just said is, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, people with high cholesterol live the longest, and people with low cholesterol die much earlier, and usually of some form of cancer. I mean, it's just all backwards. And it's because of corruption. I mean, in my chapter 18, I cover statins. I mean, if anybody has heart disease, which probably a lot, because it's our biggest killer, which is cardiovascular disease, which is heart attacks and strokes and Alzheimer's. I have a big area in the book. I cover that a lot because that's what happened to me. That was one of my comorbidities. And there was a study I have covered in chapter 18 on the statins. It was a big study, 92,135 patients, 2 groups. And one group, they were taking statins because of something goofy that their doctor was telling them about their cholesterol, this and that. And they were doing it for primary prevention, which means they haven't had any heart attack yet. They were just taking it because either their doctor says, oh, your cholesterol's too high or something that's really wrong. And so patients want to know, okay, so if I take a statin every day for the rest of my life, how much longer can I live? So the researchers set out to find that. I said, yeah, well, let's find out. So anyway, the people that were taking the statin for primary prevention, no heart attack yet, they lived a mere 3 days longer than those in the other group not taking a statin.
That's crazy.
And then in the group taking a statin for secondary prevention, in other words, they already had a heart attack, they lived a big 4 days longer. So I asked my reader in the book, I said, look, you still want to put up with the nasty side effects of taking statins? Because for some people, they can be pretty bad, aches and pains. Yes. You drop at least 20 or 30 IQ points. I mean, it's like road rage, psychoses, and all this kind of thing. And so, it's just, and see, the thing is, the reason why you drop so many IQ points and you get foggy and that kind of thing is because statins are very good at lowering cholesterol, but that's what the brain needs lots of.
Yes, right. Exactly.
It's like, oh my God. So
that is so crazy to me how, please don't take a statin. Please, please, please don't take a statin. You did mention something in the book that I want to, since you're talking about, you mentioned heart disease, and you also mentioned that you had a heart attack. In the book, you talked about how heart disease and diabetes are the same thing.
Well, here's the thing. To be slightly more, you're right on it, but to be slightly more accurate is that type 2 diabetes, either being pre-diabetic or a full-blown type 2 diabetic, that is the source root cause of cardiovascular disease. your heart attacks, strokes, certain cancers, PCOS, amputations from diabetic neuropathy, and you're losing toes and chopping off feet. Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, cataracts and blindness. It all starts there. And that's why I tell people, I say, look, when you get the book, if you just read chapter 1, you're going to know more than most doctors, because you have to understand the two most fundamental players in the processing of the food that you put in your mouth. And that's glucose and insulin. You eat something and your glucose or your blood sugar goes up. And then the pancreas senses that and emits or secretes some insulin to keep it in a safe level and that kind of thing. And it's a normal process that goes on through life. But when you're eating the wrong food, like the Unholy Trinity, pardon me, or too often, or both, and your glucose and insulin are elevated hour after hour, day after day, you very quickly, and they've proven this, what happens within 8 days, you develop prediabetes. Well, actually, it's at this point, it's just hyperinsulinemia, which is just a fancy sounding medical term called hyperinsulinemia. It's hyper, too much, insulin. Emia means in the blood. Too much insulin in the blood, hyperinsulinemia. And that very soon turns into insulin resistance, where the cells are like rejecting or resisting the insulin because it's just too much. You can't get any more into the suitcase, right? It's just, we don't have any more room in here. And that very quickly turns into prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. And then that goes through the arteries. And then you start to turn on the genetics that your ancestors, your mom and dad, grandma, grandpa have lurking. And then over time, that can lead to all these different complications. So it's the root cause. So most doctors, they don't know how to test for type 2 diabetes. I was a raging type 2 diabetic, and I didn't know it, because here's the reason. Most doctors, they'll check A1C and fasting blood glucose. Right. And even the American Diabetes Association will tell you, hey, you're going to miss a lot of people if you only do those two. That's what most doctors do. They'll test that. They go, oh, you're fine, and I'll see you in a year. No, you can be normal and still be wildly off the charts type 2 diabetic. And that was me. I had normal fasting glucose and normal A1C, but when I did there's a test that you can detect it. This is shocking. A new study came out of, not so new, a couple of years ago, out of Johns Hopkins, and they discovered that 74% of doctors, now we're talking general practitioners, family physicians, internists, and cardiologists, 74% do not know how to properly diagnose and test for prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. It's like, what? That's our biggest epidemic, because that's what's leading to all of the overweight and obesity epidemic that we have and all the diseases. And so they don't do this test called the OGTT with insulin, oral glucose tolerance test with insulin. You can buy it today for $89 and have it done tomorrow at a local lab near you, and find out. That way you're out of mystery. Or you can, just ask your doctor for it, that kind of thing. And by the way, I have all that up on my website. You go to danieltrevor.com. I'm not selling anything. You can buy it there if you want. You could just write them down and say, Doc, I want to get this one and this one and this one, and take it to your doctor in case you have insurance, that kind of thing. And so, you need to do that. You need to get these tests, because that's the number one thing I tell people, especially when you're first starting out. You got to know where you are. What's your starting point? Where are you? Because, like I later found, after I had the heart attack, I found out about all this information, and I got all these tests done. Not only did I was a raging type 2 diabetic, and I had already had the heart attack, I had what was called NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Why did I have that? I had that because I wasn't a drinker. I don't drink, no drugs. I'm already silly enough. And I was really sold on propaganda and the BS of heart healthy whole grains. And I would start my morning with a big bowl of granola that had to have at least 50 or 60 grams of carbohydrates right there, and lots of high fructose corn syrup, which is what causes the fatty liver disease. If you don't, I mean, it's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease,
right?
Because none of the cells in the body can assimilate it, and all goes to the liver and stores up fatty. And I didn't know any of that, and so my numbers were out the roof. The last comorbidity I had was osteoporosis. I wrote a whole chapter on that too, because they're finding, in fact, the first study that I cover in that chapter 13 is about that they're finding that it's descending into earlier and earlier ages. The first study that I have there was they were looking at people between the age of 35 and 50, and they're finding osteopenia, osteoporosis. It's like, what? And it's all due to the introduction, and they're eating all the standard American diet, the Unholy Trinity, carbs. Basically, when I say the carbs, I'm talking about your industrially refined and processed grains, which they then turn into powders, which they then turn into bread, pasta, cereal, biscuits, waffles, pizza crusts, pancakes, and on that way. And then, of course, we have the candy cake, ice cream, soda, fruit juice, and so on. But anyway, yeah, those were my 4 comorbidities, if you want to jump in and ask anything about those.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, you said the NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, was caused by high fructose corn syrup.
Right. I cover all that. I think it's chapter 4 or something. I can't remember right now. I have so much information. So excuse me if I'm not quite.
That's okay. No problem.
I have more scientific citations in that book than any other health and wellness book. But I have these file clerks are in my brain. They're running over. Oh, no, it's in this file cabinet over here. No, it's in this one. So, I think
no problem. Yeah. So that metabolizes in the liver and just completely just stores as fat on your body.
Yes. Well, it stores the fatty in your liver. Now,
fatty liver, right. Yes.
Yeah, the fatty liver. Yeah, but the thing is with the whole, what I was explaining about the glucose going up and the insulin, we have to remember that insulin is the fat storage hormone. Right. And you already know that. Yes. You eat the carbs or the sugars and so forth, even the oils, and they'll raise your glucose. And then the insulin, you get hyperinsulinemia, too much. And that overload of that is going to store on your body, especially in the belly area and your hips and everything else like that. And you don't want to do that. The reason why you want to have the low carb diet is because that's more ancestral. Like, you'll hear Dr. Ken Berry talk about it. We want to get our bodies into a state of ketosis. Yes. Because that's where we were evolutionarily developed over millions of years, that kind of thing. And those are basically 3 diets, and they're different versions. The keto diet, which is mostly animal products and some, small amount of vegetables and that kind of thing, maybe some nuts. And then you have your carnivore, which is just animal products. And then you have your what's called the lion diet. I had a misunderstanding on all this. The lion diet is just meat because they're eating, the ruminant animals. Whereas, because the lions, they don't eat eggs and cheese and shrimp and all that. That's the carnivore diet. That's mostly, it's like eggs, beef, butter, that kind of thing. And those are the 3 areas how we eat for most of our existence. And that puts us into a state of ketosis. It's low carbohydrate. Keto is generally considered 50 grams of carbs or below.
50 grams of total carbs.
Total carbs. Yes, that's right. I got more than that in my granola bowl there. And I didn't know any of this. And I learned, these different, especially when I ran into Judy Joe, she was telling me, because I did an interview with her, her, who she is. Yes. She's got a great channel. But so listen, I was just like everybody else. I got my nutrition from the news, or this week, this is bad, that week, this is good, everything. And I don't know, I'm just this kid from Philly who's I'm an artist, I'm a musician, I'm still surround myself with that. I grew up on Stevie and Marvin and Aretha, Shaka,
Okay.
Luther, Donnie. And, I only have to say the first names, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? And, of course, the Isley Brothers, and the Whisperers, and Earth, Wind, and Fire, Stylistics. And then, you just stay in coming forward, you just stay with that. And I don't know why I brought that up, but I went back to Philly there for a minute. And you're in Detroit,
I love
right?
those oldies and goodies. I love those oldies and goodies too. So, so I wanted to ask you, were you overweight when you had your heart attack?
I was always on the slim side, and I'll tell you why. I always, despite my diet being way off, I was in the standard American diet, and I had to learn a lot, just like everybody else. And I had my food addictions and that kind of thing. I always made it to the gym. And the reason why that's important, and I should have had my heart attack years and years and years ago, because that runs in my family big time. But what happens is, and I covered this in chapter 9, it's all about exercise. And there was a big study where they wanted to look at what's the best exercise for people over 40. Mm-hmm. Is it cardio and aerobics, or is it resistance training with the weights and the machines and that kind of thing? And they had this big study, and I even have the chart from the study in the book, because in the book I have a lot of graphs and images and photos and that kind of thing. I want the reader to have an easier time of it, right? Because they can understand when the graph is going like this. U.S. Dietary Guidelines and the pure food pyramids put in here, and obesity is going like this, right?
Right.
They can understand things like that. So I have this chart, and it shows these black bars that represent the amount of benefits if you do, for people over 40, if they did resistance training, as opposed to the cardio and aerobics, that kind of thing. It's just amazing. It's fantastically much more beneficial to people over 40 to do resistance training, because, which I cover on the next page into that, that's because whenever let's say you're doing a curl, or you're pushing, working your calves, or whatever it is you're doing at the gym, what happens is you are pulling glucose out of the bloodstream where it can do a lot of damage, and you're pulling it into the muscle where it's used as energy, which is very healthy. You're getting the blood glucose out of the arteries and so forth, and into the muscle. And so because I did that for so long, and that was what saved me from having it back in my 40s or something, Yeah. So anyway, like that. And it's very important. So for people over 40, resistance training, and because it's not ancestral anyway, because I see these guys. I was at the gym yesterday, and I saw this guy, and he just got off the treadmill, and he had spent a half hour. And I said, and he's probably 60. And I said, we're just gym buddies. I know him just from the gym. I said, do you enjoy that? He said, not especially.
Right.
And so I'm trying to explain to him. I said, look, these evolutionary, there's 3 things we always had we had, first of all, jogging, just some definitions, just a slow pace, 4 miles an hour. Running is faster and more intense. Mm-hmm. And sprinting is like flat out, real fast for a short period of time, right? Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I said, when you and I were out hunting, 3,000 years ago or 5,000, when did we ever, or we were, back as hunter-gatherers, when did we have the need to run through the jungle or the woods for a half hour? To just not run, but we sprinted when we were going after our food, or we wanted to get away from becoming food, right? But there was never any jogging. I was like, what jogging? It wasn't a thing. We sprinted, and it was just, that kind of thing. And he said, wow, that really makes sense to me. So I'm trying to explain to him how these bodies have evolutionarily developed over millions of years. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine? I said, yeah, Uncle Throgmagog would think that you had gone, the tribe would have thought you went crazy.
Right.
Did he eat one of those crazy mushrooms again?
Right. Just out there jogging. Makes no sense. So they did walk a lot. So walking is good, but yeah,
Sure.
jogging
And
is
sprinted. We sprinted a lot too,
yeah.
chasing
Sprinting
after
is
our.
really good. Um, I interviewed Coach Bronson. And he talked a lot about sprinting and how good
Oh,
that is.
really?
I know, yeah. So that was a really very profound interview as well.
Yeah, Dr. Sean O'Mara covers that
Yeah.
too.
Oh, he's the sprinting. He is the sprinting guy.
Well, it's all
But
based on evolution, like he says.
yes.
So,
Yep.
oh,
All
and
right.
by the
So
way,
mhm,
before we went live, you said something about your grandkids were over and everything. I
mhm.
got a tip for you because the grandkids, I'm sure they all want to eat the bad, standard American diet. There's a website. There's a gal I'm with. Like I was invited onto this Maha social media working group by Dr. Eric Berg. And one of the people on there is this gal, Vani Hari. I think she's
Okay.
Indian. Vani Hari, Hari. And her website, she has a page where she has all these different snacks and healthy foods for kids
Okay.
that are not. So go there and make sure you have your house filled with those instead of the Oreos.
I mean, that is the challenge, right? So, actually, since you're talking about my grandkids, they recently moved in with me and they are on a standard American trash diet. So
Oh,
we are with their mom. I'm working to try to see what can we do. So that is a key thing is, you know, the convenience factor. That
exactly.
convenience factor is such a big deal.
Yeah, check out her website, Vani
I'll definitely
Hari,
take a look.
and she's got a whole page on because I sent it to my older daughter who has kids.
Mhm.
I said, "Look, you got to get this stuff in the house," because I was seeing my little 2-year-old grandson eating these. What do they call them? The fishies, the little orange fishies things.
Oh, goldfish.
Yeah, and I said,
Yeah,
"Look, you got
I
to get a
mean,
substitute for that."
man, I tell you, it's really scary. And when I think about kids and the things that happen with us, you talked about how the brain, needs this cholesterol. And we want our kids to be at their best, really. We want them
Yeah,
to behave. We want them to not run around like crazy maniacs. We want them to really be on their best behavior, and how can they possibly be
yeah,
with the food that we're giving to them? So I want to take a turn and I want to talk about the unholy trinity: carbs, sugar, and seed oils. Can you
yeah.
just walk us through each one and what they do to the body?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they're very cheap to develop and manufacture, and that's why Big Food uses them. And you got to
Mm-hmm.
remember that Big Food, they have these biochemical geniuses and PhDs in their labs and their conference rooms around the world trying to figure out, okay, so what ingredients can we put in to make them eat more of it, eat the whole bag instead of half the bag? It's more profits and the bottom line as opposed to what's good for human beings. And I don't know if you know this, but in the mid to late 80s, the tobacco industry started going down because people were listening to the Surgeon General, how bad it was for you smoking. And so the tobacco companies looked around and said, okay, so what do we got to do? They then started buying up the big food companies. They bought Kraft and Nabisco and General Foods within just a few years. And they brought their addiction scientists from big tobacco over to the big food. And when I say addiction scientists, I'm not talking about people to get you unaddicted to things. This is okay, so how do we, turn on their opiate receptors in the brain so they want to keep eating this thing and throw several bags into their cart as they're going through. And it's just such a corrupt situation, because the way I look at it is, this is the other unholy trinity. Is the big food, they cause you to go to big medicine, and then big medicine sends you over to big pharma, and around we go. Oh my God, it's just wild. So anyway, so again, the carbs are the grain carbs and the sugars and that kind of thing. the grains that turn into sugar when you put them in your body, they turn into glucose. And the oils, the seed oils, oh my God, I had no idea about any of this. And I cover that in my chapter 6. It's called The Shocking Truth About Vegetable Oils. I didn't know that these they weren't even in existence until the mid 1800s. They were used as lubricant machinery lubricant in the 1800s in the Industrial Revolution. Who knew? And then there were these two guys that came from Europe to Ohio, and they looked at a bucket of it, and it resembled lard, which is what people use to cook with. And they thought, hey, well, why don't we sell it to people and make some money? And this was William Procter and James Gamble, Procter and Gamble.
Mm-hmm.
And so by 1911, this, Crisco started flying off the shelves, and they had and then they have all these other ones that are vegetable oils like canola, safflower, sunflower, soybean, and all that. And those turn out to be carcinogenic, neurodegenerative, and 7 to 10 times more likely that you'll have arterial inflammation and heart disease. So it's just wild. And it wasn't until like in the 90s where they discovered that, this is like 90 years later. Yeah, the 90s where they discovered that trans fats was the most awful fat that you could put in your body. And then they also discovered that Crisco has more trans fats than any other food that there is. And they put these seed oils into everything. It's in your crackers and your cookies and your all kinds of stuff. You walk down your supermarket and you look in to the labels, and they're all in there. And most of them, not all of them. And then the other thing is the reason why wheat is so dangerous, and I have a whole chapter on that called "Are You a Wheat Addict?" See, wheat raises the blood sugar higher than a Snickers candy bar. And when I found that out, I went, oh my God, this was just one of the many times I had my mind blown. Wheat raises the blood sugar higher than a candy bar. And when they figured that out, back in the late 60s, early 70s, Big Ag and Big Food, they got together, and what they did with the wheat is they had these two processes. One was called chemical mutagenesis and radiation mutagenesis. And what that does is amps up this protein in gluten, which is called gliadin, Gliadin. So what does that do? It attaches to the opiate receptors of the brain. It doesn't get you high or relieve pain or anything like that. What its expression is to make you crave more of the things that have wheat and grains in them, like the bread, the pasta, the pizza crust, the tortillas, then on and on that way. Check this stat out. This is a shocking statistic when I found this out. The average supermarket has 60,000 products.
Okay.
59,000 of them have wheat or some form of wheat in them.
Wow.
They are really coming after our opiate receptors. Even Twizzlers, the candy. Next time you're down the candy aisle, look at the second ingredient. It says wheat. It's like,
wow.
Oh my God.
So they're really, really working hard to make sure that we are really addicted to these foods. So I talked to so many people, and and they always say, oh, I could never give up my this or that. And that is the reason you feel like you could never give it up, because you have this addiction to it. And they have designed it that way.
Yes.
The makers hired these scientists to make sure that you get addicted so that you keep going back to the store and buying that.
I'm telling you, that's why I have these tips and tricks in the book that I try to give. I said, look, what you need to do when your first assignment is, you have to own up and say, okay, so what is it that I'm addicted to? What can I not live without? Okay, so it's this, this, and this. Or it's a much longer list than that. Okay, so you make your list. I can't live without the pizza and the this or the yummy granola that's loaded with carbs and sugars and all this stuff. And so what you need to do is you need to take that list and go one by one and find a healthy but delicious substitute that will just get you through that until you, because while I advise people not to go cold turkey because you're going to set yourself up for failure. Some people can do it. They can go, oh yeah, I'm just going to switch. And then they go like that. I don't know. The rest of us lesser mortals are not going to be able to do that, right? So I say, look, take your time, just get through it, and it's fine. And and YouTube these days is a treasure trove of healthy keto, recipes and that kind of thing. And I was hooked on the pizza. And so instead of getting the pizza crust, filled with grains and that kind of thing, I found out how to make an almond flour. And then as you get these substitutes and you start getting away from these addictive foods, your taste buds and palate does change, and you no longer even want them. I mean, it takes a while. And the hardest thing that I found, that I find most people, is the complete and a total elimination of wheat and grains, because that is what really can turn on the opiate receptors. That's why they have it in 59,000 of the products in the 60,000 out of the 60,000 in the supermarket. So you make your list, you find your tasty substitutes that you can live with, and you go in that direction. And that's what I did, and that's what really helped me. And by the way, speaking of pizza, I was talking about this with Ken Berry when I was on his channel, and what they do is people think, oh, well, I'll just get a cauliflower pizza. That way, there's no grains, that kind of thing. But if you turn over and you look at the ingredients, see, wheat raises, like I said before, wheat raises the blood sugar higher than anything else. And there's only 4 things that raise the blood sugar higher than wheat, and that's cornstarch, tapioca starch, rice flour, and potato flour.
Wow.
And they put those 4, after they take the grains out, they put those 4 into the pizza with the cauliflowers. And it's like, oh my God, that's why when you
rice flour is in there a lot.
Yeah, tapioca starch. I mean, I'm telling you, next time you're down that frozen aisle, pick it up and look at it. It's cornstarch, tapioca starch, rice flour, and potato flour. Deadly. So you got to be careful with those cauliflower pizzas. Don't think you're often. But anyway, that's a successful or easier way to make the transition. Pick something that you can live with. I had to get something to substitute with the granola that I was addicted to. So, I found a way to make it with, no sugar, no grains. There's certain nuts and seeds that are, that are okay when you're first starting out and you make this granola, and that can help you. Definitely.
I think a lot of people, can benefit from transitioning to a ketogenic way of eating, which, as you mentioned, is 50 total carbs or less. 20 carbs is good, really, really good. Go to 20 if you can get there. But ketogenic way of eating can be a great way to transition and into a keto lifestyle, because our goal is to be in ketosis.
Yes, that's right.
So
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yes. And so that should be your goal. So I definitely think a transition to a ketogenic. I did keto for I always say this. I did keto for 5 years, and then I did Cheeto for 5 years because I couldn't stay on keto. I kept cheating.
That's funny. I love that. I'm going to steal that. Keto and then Cheeto. Well, at least when you do Cheeto, at least the next day, you know exactly what to do. You can get back on it if you fall off the wagon, as they say, right? But
I've been carnivore for 2.5 now. So wow. Carnivore is the way for me, though I realize that not everybody has to be a carnivore.
Yeah, no, look, we all have these different needs and wants and genetics and DNA and everything. And I tell people, I say, look, this is not a religion, right?
Right.
When you and I were out hunting 3,000 years ago, and we came across some berries that had just come back in season for just a short time, we would go tell the tribe we'd go enjoy some berries. And
we would gorge on that.
Yeah, of all the fruits, those are the lowest glycemic, We didn't think, oh, we're carnivore, I'm not allowed to have that. I said, no, it's low glycemic, low lectins, and we got to use our brains here. And, we got to just do that. And we didn't think, oh, my CGM is going to explode. And we didn't have those kind of thoughts. Look, life was already brutal enough, right? So if we can enjoy ourselves for a short time, for a few weeks during the year, and had some berries, the berries are a lot safer. That's how I get through my, anybody with gut issues, chapter 23 is called Maximizing Gut Health. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, there's a yogurt that I have that I got from the cardiologist, Dr. William Davis. He has this amazing book called Super Gut. And there's this yogurt that you can make that just transforms. It's really amazing. And when I say yogurt, you don't have to worry if you're vegan or lactose intolerant, because it goes through a fermentation period. Whenever you make a yogurt like this, see, most commercial yogurts are fermented for just a few hours to increase production, right? Yes. This yogurt is fermented for 36 hours. And it takes it, when you ferment a food like that, it takes it from being any kind of a dairy from lactose, and it turns into a lactic acid, which is doesn't give you any lactose intolerant, or it's no longer a dairy product, right? And the reason why it's 36 hours is because, and I even have a chart on this, it's similar to if you double a penny every day for a month, for 30 days, like you ask a fifth grader, hey, you want me to give you $1 million, or would you like me to double a penny every month for 30 days? Oh, I'll take the $1 million. But when you do the penny, it's crawling along the bottom, right? And then the last 6 days, it starts to go like this. And it reaches $5,300,000 and something dollars, right? The same thing happens with this yogurt, where in the last 6 hours it just goes exponentially up with all these microbes. Because in most of us that have been eating a standard American diet for a long time, we get what's called a dysbiosis, or an imbalance. There's too much of one family of microbiota, and there's not enough of another. And you get leaky gut syndrome and endotoxemia, and get all these different things that you can solve with this. So that's another tip. And again,
that's really good. I want to just mention in regard to that this is why we see a lot of sometimes gastric distress type of things when we are transitioning from a standard American diet to a ketogenic diet, because our gut microbiome is like completely out of whack. And so, you may see some gastric distress happening there when you're doing that, going through the transition phase.
Yeah, that's why I tell people, don't try to rush into things. Your microbiome is adjusting, your body's adjusting. Take it as you can take it.
Absolutely. So, what are your most powerful recommendations for people that are trying to escape the unholy trinity?
Oh my God. Well, the very first thing you got to do is, because some people, they don't know that they're sick. Their doctor doesn't do the right test. That's why I say on my chapter, what I did was I reached out to this guy that I found. His name is Dr. Ford Brewer, and he's a genius at all the testing, right? He's out of Johns Hopkins, and he's taught thousands of doctors over the years. And he knows more about testing for all these diseases than your average cardiologist and that kind of thing. So I reached out to him. I said, look, I'm writing this book. Could you write me a chapter that delineates what are the most important blood labs and scans that anyone can buy online without needing a doctor's prescription? Right. That way you can buy it yourself online if your doctor, gives you a hard time or tells you that you don't need it. That way you can find out if you've got something lurking, ready to pounce. I mean, that's what I did, because none of these 4 comorbidities, my doctors missed all 4 of them. I passed my stress test. All these things, I passed everything with flying colors. And since they don't know, I mean, even Dr. Davis also has this he has another book earlier on, about 6 years ago. It was called Undoctored: why healthcare has failed you and how you can become smarter than your doctor. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And he knows he was an interventional cardiologist for many years, for decades. And he has this quote that I stole from him. I got his permission, of course, to use in my introduction. And he said, what was it? It was said, I'm trying to make the point that you have to take things into your own hands. Your doctor may not know. So the quote was, hamburger contains no ham. There are no grapes or nuts in grape nuts.
Right.
And health does not come from healthcare. So anyway, you really do have to find out what the right tests are and where you are on the diabetic spectrum, because that's the source root cause of, and most people don't know it. I mean, it's just, and then all these, there's 438 amputations a day.
Yeah.
Toes being chopped off, 160,000 annually. I mean, it's like, it's just awful. And we really, if I can do anything, we've all been fooled. I was fooled too. And that's what led to and that's what reminds me of this great quote from Mark Twain, who was this common sense philosopher of the 1800s. And he said something like, but he said, it's easier to fool people than to convince them they have been fooled. It's easier to fool people than to convince them.
I saw that quote the other day. Literally just saw that quote the other day.
You did?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
and
great.
It's so true. It is so true that, I mean, I want to have you go ahead and finish with these recommendations, but, I want you to talk a little bit about the food pyramid also.
Yeah, well, the good news there is that I think I mentioned before, Dr. Eric Berg reached out to me back in February to ask me to join this MAHA working group. Mm-hmm. And I didn't say, yeah, I said, hell yeah. So he invited me onto that. And so with a lot of other people, I mean, this is really happening now. There's just amazing people in there. And our new FDA commissioner, Dr. Marty McCary, just said in a televised interview last week, we're rewriting the food pyramid, which has been very damaging to American health for 70 years. And we're also going to stop the demonization of saturated fat, meat, beef, cheese, and butter, and all that, because it's just, there's no studies, zero, that prove that eating red meat cause either cancer or heart disease. It's just, there's zero, there's none. But hey, my doctor, he's got a white jacket. He's got a stethoscope around his neck. And I just like to think of what, like Ken Berry says, doctors are just dudes and chicks. And
the thing is, they have been taught what they've been taught. And we talked earlier about the fact that who is putting these curricula in place, right, for our doctors. And they are being taught what they are being taught. And so that is what they're practicing. They're practicing medicine. And so I don't blame them, because literally some of them there's so many of them that are coming out of that. Like, they're doing their own research. They're figuring out on their own that wonderful. I'm not healing people, people are not getting well. It's just, throwing more and more medications at it, which are not dealing with root cause issues. So
I'm telling you, that's exactly it. So that's changing the food pyramid. It's going to, I can't give you any further details because it's still confidential, but that's coming. It's coming soon. The new food pyramid, new dietary guidelines. Right. I mean, even my colleague, Nina Teicholz, she wrote this amazing book in about 10 years ago called The Big Fat Surprise: Why Butter, Meat, and Cheese Belong in a Healthy Diet.
Right.
And she's part of this whole MAHA thing too. And I think I cover this in the back of chapter 7, where her and her group did an investigative research study into the committee members of the Dietary Guidelines. And they found that 95% of the committee members, in other words, 19 out of 20, had COI, conflicts of interest with Kellogg, Big Pharma, other big craft, all these Dannon and so, oh my God, I mean, it's just the corruption is just really a lot to confront. And that's
It really
why
is.
it's just such a shame that we really need to defend ourselves and get the information.
It is. And and I want to just, I had this thought about, I always say this myself, like, I feel like the tide is turning a little bit, but we're just going up against a huge tsunami. We're like little voices crying in the wilderness, right? Trying to tell everybody that you've been duped. Like, you have literally been duped, and you can heal your body from the inside out. And it's literally, like, it's so hard to convince people. It really, really
It's
is.
just, like I said earlier, throughout history, when you get money next to human beings, some of them just don't keep their morals and ethics together. Right. And that goes by the wayside. And it's just such a shame because there's so much corruption. I should tell you about anybody with heart disease out there might like this. There was this trial called the ischemia trial. You may have heard of it. And this was several years ago. And they wanted to find, it was a large $100 million government funded trial. They wanted to find out, it involved 5,179 patients. And they had two groups. One group, they gave invasive procedures, CABG, which is coronary artery bypass graft. That's like open heart surgery, or stents, PCI, percutaneous coronary intervention. So one group got those. The other group, they sent them in the direction of lifestyle. Lose 30 or 40 pounds, stop eating the Cheetos and the Coca-Cola, get off get back to the gym, that kind of thing. And they followed them closely for 4 years. And then at the end of the 4 years, they found no difference in outcomes. Wow. See, what they wanted to do was they wanted to prove that these invasive procedures, they were the shit. We really need to do more of them, right?
We need to do more of that.
And then the study even said that the ischemia trial failed to show that they were any good at prevention, because that's what that they're done 85% of the time for prevention. Right. Of course, they're fine for emergency situations if the person's having a heart attack, something happening in the hospital, but that's only 15% of the time. The other 85% of the time, they're done for prevention. And these studies showed that they don't work for prevention. So I asked the reader in the book, I said, okay, so if your cardiologist saying, hey, I think we need to do one of these invasive procedures, show him these studies, then he'll know that right? And then I say, explain to me again why you think I should do this, why I can't just get back to the gym and do the right diet and that kind of thing. And, but because, if those were to go away, there's no way that the board of directors of the hospital or the cardiology clinic is going to want to see all those go away, because there goes the beach house. There goes the kids in Ivy League. There goes the mountain retreat. There goes from the Mercedes down to a Kia. We can't have that, right? So it's just the way the system is set up. And it's just, it's just a shame. We need to wake ourselves up. And thank you so much for helping to get the word out on, metabolic health and eating a proper human diet. And, you're doing the best you can. It's very, very tough, especially when people have this addiction.
Absolutely. We are almost out of time, so I'm just going to ask one more question.
Sure.
What is next for you? What's coming up next? What you got in the works?
I'd have to say I just need to continue to get the word out on the book, because it's doing well. I think, it's an international bestseller now. But
yes, I saw that.
You don't make a lot of money as an entrepreneur. I can tell you, believe me, you don't make a lot of money selling health and wellness books. I didn't know anything about the publishing industry. The way you make a lot of money in the publishing industry is you got to write a fiction, action adventure, a spy novel, some kind of sexy romance, and then if they turn it into a movie, then you're talking about Ferrari money and that kind of thing. But listen, I have become rich in my heart knowing that I hear from people all over the world. I say, damn, wow, I never knew about this thing, this and that, and it's changed my life. And so that's where I get my reward now. So basically what I want to do is, and if you can point me in the direction of anybody that that has YouTube, I like getting on YouTube channels and talking about this stuff so that other people can see it, and then they can go get the book. And what I offer, and I should let your audience know, is that and there's no other authors that I know of that do this. On my website, danieltrevor.com, you can get a free preview of the book. What that is you get on my mailing list. I have a free mailing list. Once a week, I'll send something out. But when you sign up, you automatically, there's a PDF of the first 48 pages that's kicked out to you. That way you can taste it, hey, I like this, I'll take some more, and then you can go get the book at Amazon or whatever, So, go there. I have a lot of great information. There's a lot of the videos that I've done. And basically, I just want to keep people are still getting such a great reaction to the book that I think there's a lot more gas in the tank to take it a lot further, to help educate people into how to get unaddicted to the foods, and at least get them to do the tests so that you can find out if they've got something awry that they need to fix. Otherwise, it's, they're off to the next, they're.
Oop. Sorry about that. Yep.
Was that me?
That was me. Sorry about that.
No problem. Yeah, so we want to stay around as long as we can. I got these grandkids now. I want to grow up with them, and we all have our reasons to stay around. And we want to live. We want to add healthy years to our life, not life. We want to add life to our years, not just years to our life.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you very much for coming on CarnivorousGrama Speaks. This has been a great conversation. You guys go and check out Daniel's website at danieltrevor.com, which I just dropped into the chat. And then also I dropped a link to his book entitled Unholy Trinity. How carbs, sugar, and oils make us fat, sick, and addicted, and how to escape their grip. I put that link also in the chat, and you guys can also check that out down in the description box of this video. So, Daniel, if you could just say one more thing, I'm going to let you have the final word, and then we're going to close out. You hang out here, and we'll shut down.
Yeah. No, listen, if you want to find out where you are, get some testing done. And then you'll know if you're fine or somewhere between that needs attention, then you'll know. Don't always trust that your doctor's going to know, because the odds are against you that you have a doctor that knows the proper testing and all that kind of thing. And I cover all that in the book. So anyway, I just wish everybody will find out the proper, true information like you have, and so many of the people in your audience, and not continue their decline going down like this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Yeah. We are going to see you again next week. We'll be back Monday night for Hey Sister Girl, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye, everybody.